Welcome to Encouraging Wellness, where we shed light on the plethora of holistic healing and wellness methods so you can give yourself the power to ask why and become bigger than the condition you are dealing with or the illness you are currently fighting. Join Pamela Wirth as she sits down with doctors, medical experts, healthcare practitioners, and those with unique healing stories to dissect groundbreaking practices that combine traditional Western medicine with alternative modalities. Hear conversations that empower you to go beyond hurtful stigmas, outdated practices, and unnecessary labels, guiding you towards a healthier and happier you. Here, we highlight your true worth and help unleash your inner courage. Now your host, Pamela.
Hi, my name is Pamela Wirth, Hello Health founder and CEO, and we are with the Encouraging Wellness podcast. Thrilled to have Melissa Schiefelbein on our show today, and she's going to share more about her personal and professional journey, as well as tell us in a lot more about what is going on. So, Melissa, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about your personal journey and how you got into Bloom Health.
Well, I got into Bloom Health very unexpectedly. I started off as an early childhood education teacher and was very dedicated to the field of education and teaching when my son at 2 years old was diagnosed with severe autism. And at the time, being a parent and even being in the education field, I had no idea what autism was, or it was a term that was up and coming at the time. But as a parent, you really don't know. I just knew, one day I put my child, who was getting words and doing lots of things and developing normally, and I put him to bed. And one morning he woke up and he was completely different, seemingly overnight. So I panicked and I had no idea what to do. But when he was diagnosed, I stopped working and dedicated myself full time to his therapies. And while in his therapies, I was kind of working with him alongside one of the therapists, and they saw how I was interacting with him and said, you should get into ABA. This is something that I think would help you with him, but then also you seem to have a knack for it. So it all went, just gangbusters from there. So got into the field of ABA, became a Board Certified Behavioral Analyst, and dedicated much of my life to studying what autism is, what behavioral and cognitive therapies do, and started working for a major health system. And once I started realizing where the connection needed to be and looking at the whole person, and full on, the full scope of what's going on for a child who's been diagnosed with a behavioral disorder. That's what made me start Bloom Health, is to educate parents and to get parents every little bit of information that they need. So no one has to feel lost like I did.
That's certainly, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and certainly it's really hard to find other people that have been through it and as well as want to help. So I think that's incredible. Who is ABA for, and what does it kind of stand for, and some of the elements of it, and tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So applied behavioral analysis is a type of therapy usually recommended by a developmental pediatrician or anybody else who can diagnose a person with autism. That's usually one of the first type of therapies that's on the docket as, a recommended treatment. And it's a very comprehensive therapy. It was founded by B.F. Skinner, decades ago, but over time it developed into what we know it is now. And it's a behavioral therapy that takes an empirical approach. So it's based on research. It's based on, what's been proven to be effective, and it works on a very wide range. So if you get speech therapy, you're working on mechanics of speech. If you get occupational therapy, you're working on more regulatory skills. But applied behavioral analysis looks at a child, where they are developmentally, and what are the strengths, what are the deficits, what are the things that could be in the way of a child learning new skills, and it works on all of them. So it's very intense, comprehensive therapy.
Is it only for people that have an autism diagnosis?
No, actually, ABA is used for a multitude of behavioral disorders, but also, I mean, ABA practices are great for just behavior guidance in general. There are a lot of ABA programs out there for people who want to start lifestyle changes like diets, or even major companies will use them to help build up team momentum and incentives and things like that. So it's really good about figuring out what skills need to be developed and using reinforcement and motivational strategies for doing so.
That's really cool. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more that comes out of this.
Right.
So, encouraging wellness can come in the form of healing as well as mentorship. And mentors encourage and enable other people's development as well as help focus their efforts by setting goals and giving feedback. For those that really want to build health and wellness and take a look at nutrition and exercise and behavioral changes and mental health, what can somebody with limited knowledge or conflicting information do? Do you have any suggestions?
In terms of making big lifestyle changes and encouraging your health and wellness, I mean, the fundamental part of identifying where you want to be is identifying what possible barriers are there for you to get to where that is. I mean, a lot of times we see these big changes we want to make in terms of our health. And so many times we find ourselves not able to complete them because we take a look at what we want, but then we don't take a look at all of the steps involved in order to make that change and how realistic they might be. That's why it's so common for nutritional changes to drop off after a certain time, just because we don't take into account how it applies to our daily life. So one thing I've learned in ABA, just in terms of lifestyle changes, is being able to identify, this is what stands in the way of me being able to make these big changes. So, for someone who is interested in a lifestyle change or even interested in making small steps toward a healthier lifestyle, I would first identify, what are those realistic goals that I want to reach? What could possibly stand in my way, and what's going to motivate me? It's really about self-awareness and knowing, what motivates me, what am I reinforced by? So it's great because ABA helps you look into all those teeny tiny details that you may not consider otherwise, and helps you work them to your advantage so that you promote success and most access to reinforcement. That's the biggest part, is how do I access the most reinforcement? So
how long would it typically take to kind of do something like this with, when you're working with kids or adults or anybody, in terms of kind of next steps? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, when you initially start, you want to identify what's going to put me most in line with where I want to be. So if you're considering a child, for a child who may be developmentally behind, you would say, what's going to put this child in line to be able to function amongst peers and in the environment without support? And then you would create a treatment plan based on that. And the treatment plan would very highly reflect how much time it would realistically take to get to that goal. So for some kids, I mean, you're in intensive therapy 40 hours a week, every single day, and you're working hard at trying to fill up those milestones. For a child, or maybe even a person who's trying to make like a smaller lifestyle change, the time would reflect that. So I've seen children be in ABA therapy for even just, a small 15 hours a week, or even less than that sometimes. For some companies who are looking to incentivize teams, it's even less. It's just sessions and restructuring framework that's a little bit more behind the scenes. Typically, to develop a new habit, or to say, I really want to make this one change and I want this to become second nature. It could take, the statistics usually say anywhere from like 2 weeks to, several years. It depends on how much you structure that out and how many of your daily variables you're willing to work into that.
Yeah.
So. I wish I had a clearer answer, but
That's okay.
it does depend on the impact and the magnitude of the change that is trying to be made.
Cool. And then do you work with people remotely, just in person?
I do. I work remotely with parents mostly right now. And my motivation for that is because when I did work for a major health system, it's great. I mean, I'm so thankful that there are programs out there that take a child and put them into like a clinic setting or a center, and you work every day on these things because you're able to control the environment so much easier. So if you have things like sensory defensiveness, or you have just other things that are, constantly going on, it's harder to isolate some of these skills and really work on them. But what I find in working in that kind of a setting is that we start to see a really strong BCBA or therapist relationship between the child and then the parents, like, well, I don't know what these skills are. I don't know what they mean. And that breaks my heart personally as being a parent, because that's the number one relationship, is the parent to the child. So my program, Bloom Health, is very strongly in regards to supporting the parent and making those changes at home. And if you're already in treatment, if a child's already receiving therapy, like what does that mean for the home life, and how can we bring that into the home setting? So right now, I do kind of a hybrid. I'm in person for people who are local, and then I do a lot of online services, coaching parents through the diagnostic process, interpreting treatment plans, and then, making some of these changes at home, trying to work with the variables that are in the everyday settings.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what are some of your favorite key takeaways that you really want to impress upon families, and things to really think about, like your top 3 things you're like, don't forget?
Number one, and I know this is near and dear to your heart as well. This is something that I've had to learn along the way. No one really tells you this. And it's a huge, huge part of a child's intervention and treatment overall. And it's to look at the whole picture. Mm-hmm. And it's completely overwhelming. You're given a diagnosis for a behavioral disorder. So your mind immediately thinks, how do I treat the behavior part of it? Yeah. You don't think like, what could physiologically be happening? What could be elements in the environment that are going on? And if there's one thing that I've learned, and this is coming to you from gung-ho behavior belief, like this is what I dedicated my life to. If there are things physiologically, like things going on in the body or things going on in the environment that are working against a child acquiring new skills, then behavioral therapy will not work. It just won't. You'll make minimal changes at a large risk to frustrating the child further. So my number one is always ask, go from inside out. What could be really going on here? What could be causing this? In my son, I know if he eats gluten, he's acquired so many skills. You would never peg him as anyone to be on the spectrum now. He's third grade, no supports, anything. But if he has gluten and there are sources of wheats that are not gluten related, but if he has that, his behavior is wildly different. And there's constant inflammation. He'll get dark circles under his eyes. He'll behave differently. So you never would think, something he's eating or something he's engaged in the environment would affect behavior, but it does. Wow. So get the full scope, go see the neurologist, go see a integrative medicine practitioner, a functional medicine practitioner, get the blood work, see what's going on. I've had patients who would only aggress or engage in aggressive behavior if they had some kind of underlying infection. Yeah. And they would get infections all the time because of what they were eating and things in their environment that they knew nothing about. So number one is work from the inside out. If there's a behavior occurring, you see what possibly could be the basis, like the medical explanation. Yeah. Another takeaway is develop a team. I was told by a friend a long time ago, and it sticks with me. You can't be Wonder Woman, but you can be one wonderful woman. And when you're the parent, you're kind of like, I need to have it all figured out. I need to be the expert. But understand, like, you need people to be able to offer some fresh perspective. So once you have identified, okay, this could be a myriad of things that's going on with my child, get a team together and be the advocate that gets that team communicating. You want your pediatrician and your behavioral specialist to all be working and communicating with one another. And the third would be to try as hard as you can, block out the negativity and try to focus on your day-to-day. I was told my son would never talk. I was told that he would rely on me for the rest of his life. He would never attend school. He would never have a relationship. And when he was 4 years old, that seemed like a very distinct possibility. We didn't have a relationship besides me keeping him alive, taking care of him, getting him to therapies. And it's so easy to project this idea that he's always going to need that. And that's always going to be his story. Never did I imagine that at 9 years old, he would be, have a more extensive vocabulary than me, with 2 master's degrees and be in 3rd grade without any support and have friendships that, people are seeking him out. And it's, you don't know what your child will be from here up until even a year from now. So people will tell you things because they need to prepare you for what could be the worst possible scenario, but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. That doesn't mean that's your finality and you just have to deal with that for the rest of your life, because I think that there's an exchange of willpower that goes with that. When you think this is all I could possibly be reaching for, you stop your motivation and you stop your reinforcement, and you have to keep going. Even if it's the smallest little triumphs, you have to celebrate them and keep working, because you never know. Constantly be asking, okay, great, we got over this hill. What's next? What's the next one? What's the next one? And you'd be very surprised at what your child can do.
Yeah, I think food is a really hard thing for a lot of people too. A, our food supply is not as great as it could or should be. And then B, making sure that they get a diverse diet. Do you have any suggestions on anything that is not, none of us have time. So
no, I don't have time and I work from home.
Yeah.
So it's not even just time. It's finding the foods, paying the money for the whole foods that are out there. I mean, if you're really trying to eliminate all possible ecological and medical insults that could be coming into your child's body, you'd have to buy 100% organic. And it's hard. It's hard to do. And not to mention, children can be picky, even children who are not on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Most don't want to eat a diverse diet. So one, I would look at different ways that you could establish reinforcement for having a very good diverse diet. So in perspective, my son went through some feeding therapy, and it became just established in our household. Like, yes, you can have a small portion of some of the things that you enjoy, but let's focus on the reinforcement for things that are good for you and are going to make your body work really well. And involving him in that process was huge.
Yeah.
Like saying like, hey, you know what, these strawberries, they're going to help you grow stronger and feel good. And then once he started to get involved in the process of selecting things that he knew were going to make him feel better, it got easier for him to at least try new things. And then we offered incentives. Like, if you eat all of your strawberries, you can have, 5 extra minutes of, playing with Legos or game time or things that were incentivizing for him.
Yeah.
I really love when people make the fresh pressed juices that have all like those really good, like fruits and vegetables that, even I can drink. Like I love them. They taste great. And then also, look into your supplements. Like Kaden takes Hello Health every single day.
Thanks.
And we strive to make sure that vitamins are good. If he is lacking in something, he's got a supplement for it. I love the emphasis on foods as much as possible. That's what we're made for, but it's impossible sometimes. So just keep in mind, whatever he's not getting through the food, try to supplement with other really good stuff.
In terms of mood and some of your experience, I mean, have you found that certain things just really help move the needle, whether it's omegas or probiotics, or is there anything that really just kind of resonated with you going through that? Or
Yeah, well, probiotics for sure. You don't think about it, you think if a child seems pretty regular in terms of digestion and stuff like that, you don't give a lot of thought to it, but probiotics are incredible. Your gut is your body's second brain. 70% of our immune system occurs in the gut, which I think I learned that maybe from you, but if the gut is functioning, then brain function, overall immune system function is huge. And then the omegas are great too, because that helps build up really good brain power. That's where I see the most. If my son doesn't get those things, I see a huge difference. And we're groggy, we're tired, we're irritable, sleep issues happen. It's all these things that you think, he's not sleeping. How do I get him on a sleep schedule? Or he's not going to the bathroom. Let's give him some Miralax or do this. But if your gut and your brain are functioning as they should, then you don't have those problems. So the ones you mentioned are number two, like our staples is good probiotic, good omegas.
Anything else that you really like?
Fiber. Love the fiber. I stay away as much as I can from gluten and dairy. And it's not that I believe that he is allergic to them. It's just that we've had to do really weird stuff over the last decades to these two particular products. And our bodies just in general don't handle them well. And some people have a stronger capacity than others, so you may not see it, but it does evoke a lot of inflammation in the body and in the brain.
Yeah.
So as long as we're staying away from those two things, we tend to be good. But if there's any few things that I try to make sure his diet does include, it's good proteins, really good fats, fruits and vegetables, and fiber. Yeah,
that's cool. Any particular favorite sources of fiber? Anything particular that kind of comes to mind that you think is helpful? Or
the more fruits and vegetables you can get in there, the better off you are. I just notice a different vibrance, and it's great too because they give that like that boost of energy that even for me, I would have gone to coffee or an energy drink or something, but I find if I eat an apple and drink a whole bunch of water, we have the same kind of effect and I don't feel trashy later on.
Yeah.
So if you can take away one piece of advice is the fruits and vegetables are so critical.
Yeah, I know for us, it was really hard to get that stuff down. And it got to a point where I was cutting it up really small, sauteing it, hiding it in a meatloaf, hiding it in like ground turkey. I would like making chicken. The whole thing was just crazy. And then it got to a point where I was blending everything up into a blender and telling him to drink it and making stories about how there was ice cream in there when there wasn't. And it's not easy.
It's not. There were days, where he was at a point where he only wanted to drink Pediasure shakes. And I'm like, gosh, even the stuff in those, there's like so much sugar and nasty stuff. So I was doing the same thing. I'm blending everything up and I'm putting like a protein powder in there that's like plant-based and trying to pass it off in the Pediasure shake.
Yeah.
So that he's like, oh, it's a Pediasure shake. And maybe it tastes a little off, but
just a little different today.
It's in this little container. It's whatever I had to do. And then slowly it started to be like, we just developed reinforcement strategies of, hey man, I know that, this spinach isn't your favorite. I know, but if you can eat this much of it, we'll celebrate it in some other way. I don't want to give you too much junk, but like I said earlier, you can have 5 minutes extra on your Legos. And it just became about like making really good choices and celebrating those really good choices. And the more you can do that earlier in life, you're this is the behavioral aspect, is you're pairing that really good nutritional choice with something that's reinforcing. And over time, like if you look way back into some of the studies that have been done in applied behavioral analysis, is you're conditioning the two things together. So you're like kind of in the back of your mind, it becomes way more reinforcing to have this other thing because it's already been paired with this really cool thing that you do like. So over time, it has a better, kind of atmosphere to it because you've paired it with reinforcement.
Yeah. All this time at home has been really hard on folks. Any suggestions in terms of whether you're forced to be online or at home or stuck under the same roof and you can't get a break? I mean, any suggestions there?
Well, as difficult as it may be, structure does help. Getting yourself in a routine really does help. And it's hard because you're your own motivator. And I find this with myself too, like even knowing what I know on behavioral analysis, it can be very difficult when you are you're the person who has to come up with the motivation, you're the person who has to execute on it, and you're the person who has to reinforce it. But know that the more you stick to your usual routine, your body has momentum. And it's very similar to running or any other activity where it's so much harder to start hard and then stop and then start hard and then stop than it is to just keep even. Yeah. So one, I would say, come up with a very realistic routine and offer yourself some space for some wiggle room and stick to it as much as you can. Really celebrate your victories. And number one, cut yourself some slack. Nobody expected a pandemic. Nobody knew that this was coming, and we're all doing the best that we possibly can. So, celebrate those really great choices that you're making and treat every day as its own unique thing. So like, hey, I stuck to the routine today. Everybody's good. Everybody's healthy. That's a win. Find the reinforcement in as many things as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, anything that you kind of want to connect on that I haven't asked about, or anywhere that folks should go to find more resources or ask more questions? I mean, there's, it's obviously scary and hard when you're trying to navigate, food and sleep and mental health, and it's just so much.
Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot. I would say for one, check out, bloomhealth.org. Yeah. And, and we're constantly posting free resources for parents, just different sources of information, different blogs. And then we do offer consultations as well. And these could be for, questions that you may have in regards to setting up some of these routines and reinforcement contingencies. But then also we're licensed to be able to just talk with you and help you see, where you might be crushing it, but not knowing it because you're in your own situation.
Yeah.
But like small changes that you can make. So check us out for sure. If anyone is listening to this, but hasn't yet read the Hello Health book, please do. It's a game changer it was for our family.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's such good information in there, and it really helps you understand the importance of the inside out strategy in terms of behavior. Sometimes there's stuff physiologically going on with you, and that's a huge source of your lack of energy or lack of motivation. So keeping in touch with that. Another great resource that I depend on quite a bit is the Ultra Wellness Center with Dr. Mark Hyman. He's a functional medicine practitioner and has so much information about autoimmune disease and behavioral disorders in relation to nutrition and healthy practices. And he's got a ton for you to think on, reflect on, but then he's got stuff that you can do to help in your situation. So those are all my go-tos.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Melissa. You are truly an inspiration. It's amazing that you started Bloom. So happy that you're able to help so many people, and no doubt that all the testimonials and all the folks will be coming back to you in major force saying thank you for getting Bloom Health off the So,
well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me. You have helped me, structure Bloom out from the very beginning when I'm just, thinking, I think I want to start something out for myself and it might look like this. And I just, Hello Health has been such a huge part of that as well. So thank you too. And, let's keep helping people find their way to a healthier lifestyle overall.
thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Encouraging Wellness. We hope this serves as an eye-opener to you on new ways to approach your health and wellness. By learning both unique and the best alternative wellness and healing methods, you can live your best life. Listen to more of our episodes at www.hello.health. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let us work towards unlocking you and your family's best self. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.